things. You've had a number of television experiences, but what most people know you as is Freddy Krueger. And I'm sure that's both blessing and curse, but let's talk a little bit about how that came about.
I was busy with V, back in 80, this was 83, 84, and I was hanging out a lot with George Wendt from Cheers, and we used to frequent a bar on La Brea Avenue that had this continuous loop of scenes from Eraserhead, Hills Have Eyes, and Last House on the Left. and so that's what I knew of Wes. And I sort of had Wes in my, filed under David Lynchian, guy, and a dark artist, and high cheekbones and wore all black or something like that. I don't know, we sort of, that Wes, and the name Craven too.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a great name, for a director who specializes in horror. Craven, and he's so craven. And so George had said something about this project. He'd heard something about it, and I went over to the studio. I think it was the old Desilu on Cahuenga. And just before I went in, I had an old Datsun Roadster. I looked in the rearview mirror, and I had blonde ringlets like William Catt. I looked like I had great American hero hair, and I was tan. I was surfing a lot then. And my buddy smoked, and I licked my finger, and I put a little ash under my eyes. And with a little bit of saliva, I just sort of blended it in, and got a little, slicked my hair back off my face to show my high hairline and kind of slick it back. And I went in, and as your audience here has probably gathered, I like to talk, I want to be a communicator. I wouldn't have been an actor if I didn't want that. And I managed to keep my mouth shut, I think, in front of Wes. And I kind of played a staring game with him on the interview. While Wes, the natural raconteur, he told me all of his theories and his ideas and all of his imaginings about what he wanted to do with this project, this little kind of dark folktale, fairy tale about this killer, this child killer, who perhaps didn't go all the way to hell and wound up in some kind of horror movie purgatory where he was able to infect the dreams and the nightmares and the subconscious of the women and the men who had done him wrong, of their children, and haunt their children and their relatives. And he was going on and on about all these things, and I just stared at Wes, and tried to suck my cheeks in a bit like a fashion model and look scary. And I think Wes understood that I got it. And I think he wanted a big guy. I think he wanted a stuntman originally. Now, you and I both have narrow faces, and I, to this day, wonder if, Wes is being kind, when he says, I saw something in Robert, and maybe he just knew that if he piled all that crap on me, that I still would look normal with because I got broad shoulders for a guy my size, and you can put the prosthetics on me, and it's still the right ratio. I wonder, because now I think that's one of the successes of the Freddy Krueger makeup created by David Miller and Kevin Yeager and Steve Johnson and all these guys over the years, K&B, Howard Berger and all those guys. I think that might have been one of the gifts I bring. I have a little skinny neck too. But on the other hand, Wes, I'll take Wes's compliment that he saw something in me understanding it, that I could run with it,
But there was more than that. And it's also, there's still Robert Englund showing through that makeup. It's a very unique makeup in that it's a horrific, monstrous makeup that allows your own features to shine through there. Yeah. And your eyes have a lot to do with it, but you have a very unique face that's a very important part of Freddy Krueger and who he was visually. And the power that you bring to it as an actor goes way beyond the physicality of it.
Well, just between the interview and the first day of shooting and all those hours deep in the valley in David Thriller Miller's shop, experimenting with the makeup and the look, and they were going to have pieces of translucent flesh hanging from the ears, etc. I saw, in this interim period, the Isabella Gianni Klaus Kinski Nosferatu.
Yeah.
And I was blown away by Klaus Kinski's work in that. So I took a little bit of that too. You take whatever scraps you can get as an actor, and he'd thrust his neck in that Kinski did, and then his baldness also in that, and his the hands were up in here somewhere. And then also at some point around there, I was watching a Jimmy Cagney movie, and that little bantam cock strut of his, and the way he would plant his feet, almost like a gunfighter. And then when I put the glove on the first time, the first prototype glove was so heavy, it literally, it was like that. It was like having a workout weight in one hand. You know, when you're just working out with one hand on a dumbbell, you kind of drop your shoulder. But I did that in front of a mirror. I was, in a dressing room getting stuff fitted to me, and I went, oh, I can use that. And it's just pure vanity. You just went, oh, that looks kind of cool. And I was, what it was? It was a Sergio Leone thing. I looked like I was going to draw on somebody.
Right.
And I thought, that's got to work in this, everybody's sort of subconscious, But I was in a room with Bob Shea, head of New Line Cinema, and Wes, and it was the 11th hour, and they panicked about the hat. Now, the hat that's in all the movies is Wes's design, but Wes got cold feet towards the last second, and I was sitting there getting the makeup corrected and getting the final okay in the makeup, and people are running around and everybody's panicked and it's the last minute, and they started making me try these different hats on. It was like an old Jonathan Winters, Jack Parr show routine, And every time I put a hat on, I did an Irish accent. Oh, my name is Mick Garris. Whatever they put on me, and all these ridiculous hats. At one time, it was a Paperboy's hat. Like a 1930s Paperboy's hat. Read all about it. Yeah. And I said, you guys, we're getting desperate here. This is wrong. I said, Wes, that hat is from your imagination, the fedora. And they were worried it was going to look too much like Raiders of the Lost Ark. I said, no one's going to think of me as Harrison Ford, for God's sakes.
I got to tell you, I never did.
No one ever goes, that's not the link you do.
No.
And my link was old paperbacks of The Shadow with that hat. But I took it off and I put it on and I said, look at what it can do with the light. And I got the DP in there, Jacques Heitken, and I said, look what can happen here with the light on me. And look how we can reveal the baldness if we need to, and have him appear without the hat. And now I put the hat on and I stood and I said, look at my shadow on the wall, look at this silhouette. I remember that day very well, and I think that it was just Wes needing, me saying, I don't think we should change this. You're right. You were right the first time.
Absolutely. I mean, it's iconic.
And if I have to take credit for anything, it would be that silhouette maybe. And the body language, that's what I bring. I do get a lot of de facto love from the genius of Wes's original hook and gimmick, which is the nightmare.
Sure.
And also the fact that I am, what else could be, I'm the logo of the experience of having seen 7 Nightmare on Elm Street movies and Freddy versus Jason, but I am the logo of that experience, Freddy Krueger. Right. So I get that love, just because of the nature of playing the character, whether I did it well or not, if the show was a hit, because people love dreams or nightmares.
Well, let's talk just a little bit about the transition of Freddy over the course of these 8 movies and a season of TV shows and all of that. He got to be much more of a prankster and jokester, but I mean, there's been a real change over and over and over, and just from your perspective, I'd love to see what you think.
Well, I think some of the change was fan-inspired. We had so much fan mail after the original Nightmare on Elm Street where people liked the personality, and maybe Freddy is the first monster truly with a personality. Certainly an attitude and a sense of fun. He likes his work. Mr. Krueger does. Unapologetic, politically incorrect, and on a revenge motif. If Frankenstein rose from the ashes of that mill and could go after the sons and daughters of those good burghers, that's sort of what Freddy's done. If Freddy is the monster and the parents are the villagers, he's punishing the children of the villagers. So what happened was we embraced, in the later sequels, this personality, this attitude, this sense of humor. Some of the Freddy so-called Clint Eastwood lines, or whatever you want to call them, became, almost national, quoted lines for a while.
They were catchphrases.
Yeah, they became things that kids would say in school, and you'd hear them on talk shows and things like that. And I think we probably jumped the shark along about Nightmare on Elm Street Part 6, Freddy's dead. And I must say this in defense of Rachel Talalay and all of my wonderful friends that worked on that film. We did it intentionally. Right. You know, Rachel brings more than a little bit of John Waters with her to the set, you know, so we had some fun with that. And we did it intentionally. There's a bit of a Warner Brothers cartoon element, I know, on some of those sequences then. And we also were really going after the culture and the culture of my victims. If my kid was a skater dater, Freddie would skate. If the kid was playing with, it was a Game Boy, Freddie would get him in the game. So we were really after the culture on that one. And you could say we jumped the shark on it, but again, it was intentional. And we kind of returned to form and also deconstructed the whole franchise with Wes Craven's new Nightmare. But one of the things that happened, this is in the middle, and we had some wonderful directors then, Rennie Harlan and Stephen Hopkins, but I remember sometimes we would do a scene and I would have a line sometimes, and it would be a catchphrase, or I would improvise a line. And then other times I would do something really dark. There'd be a kiss of death, a sort of Freddy kiss of death. And I rather liked some of those. Some of them were a little violent, some of them were a little strange, but I think what happened is on a couple of the movies that were rushing post, the editors fell in love with the punchline because it gave the scene a rhythm, a sort of editorial rim shot, if you will. And I think they relied on that sometimes to maybe the detriment of Freddy's character a little bit. I don't think we ever really became like a Catskills comic, but he became maybe a little too much of a prankster, or a little too much of a wisecracker. And I think maybe if we could go back in time, there might have been one or two of those, gosh, this sounds creepy, one or two of those kills I'd like to do over again, and have them, and, you know, look through what's on the cutting room floor and find one of those dark choices and stick it back in there.